what exactly is the difference between the fine, medium, and broad nibs that you can get from BENU? That is something that I have been wondering for the longest time, and it is the main reason why I hesitated on trying out BENU pens, because there aren't really a lot of retailers around me that carry BENU, so testing it out in person was not really an option for me. So if you're as curious as me about the differences between the fine, medium, and broad nib sizes and how they compare to other pen brands out there, that is going to be the focus of today's video. I've got an agenda to keep me on track. I'm going to try not to meander, and we're just going to get right into it. So hopefully this video can be a resource for you if you're curious in the future about the differences between the number 6 Schmidt fine, medium, and broad nibs that come from BENU. So today we are going to talk about the couple of pens that I'm going to be using to do this comparison. We're going to do some short writing samples using the Sanzen paper. I've got the Hobonichi Cousin from 2025, which is sort of the problem batch of paper. So I've got the 2025 Hobonichi Cousin. I've got a loose leaf sheet of Sanzen paper that I got from Good Impressions. And then later in the video, I'm going to show you some more long form writing comparisons between the fine, medium, broad, as well as other pens that we're going to compare it to. So hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a better idea of how these write. And the other thing that I'm gonna add in is every comparison is going to be using the exact same ink. So we are going to control the ink today between across all the different pens, so that we're minimizing the amount of variation that you might see in the nib sizes depending on the different ink properties. So we're going to be using Pilot Iroshizuku Kon Peki. Yeah, last year I did a very similar comparison with my pens using Kon Peki, and it has kind of become my default pen that I like to use when I'm trying out different pens and nib sizes, because then I can always have that comparison. First, I'll talk about the pens that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using these two beautiful pens that you see here. This one is the BENU Euphoria, called Midnight in Paris, and it is hand painted by an in-house artist named Natalia Dorokina. And I'm just going to do a quick close-up of how, so you can see how beautiful this pen is. I'll just read a bit of the description from the website. It says that it is hand-painted by Natalia Dorokina, and it captures the city's iconic architecture with the majestic Notre Dame Cathedral, the elegant Louvre Pyramid, and the intricate Gothic details rising against a mesmerizing deep blue sky. I just think this pen is so elegant. I love that it's quite neutral because it's all dark, but it has this really beautiful painting on the bottom that the more you look at it, the more details you can really notice. There's the Eiffel Tower there, and there's these beautiful clouds that show just a little bit of shimmer. There's some shimmer in the cap itself that kind of look like little stars in the sky. Yeah, so this is just a really stunning pen. And that's what the inside looks like. So that's the first one. I have this in a broad. The second pen is a BENU Talisman, which is another pen model that I was really curious to try, because the Euphoria, as you can see, is quite a large pen, and I tend to gravitate more towards smaller pens because I do have smaller hands. So I was curious to see how this might feel, and thankfully BENU was very kind and was willing to send me two models to show. And because I wanted to do this video on this nib comparison, They were also kind enough to send me an extra nib for the Talisman. So the good thing is that both of these use the number 6 Schmidt nib. Yeah, so I was glad that it would all be the same size nib and we'd be able to compare across the three. So I will do the comparison with the current nib that's in here, and then I'll switch the nibs and I'll show you how to do that. But that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to look at these two pens and just look at how, I'm just going to take a moment to show you how beautiful this tiger's eye is. Please don't mind my ink-stained fingers. So tiger's eye is I'm reading this off the website, is a well-known gem that is long associated with various legends and superstitions. So it is considered by many to hold a hidden universe with its silky luster. And there's a whole article on their website that come with the pen that talk about the different ways that this tiger's eye quartz shows up in different ways. So this is the inspiration right here, this tiger's eye quartz. And the pen itself is this really beautiful swirl of like a dark black brown to a more bronzy sparkle. And then there's these larger gold sparkles throughout. And the thing that I was really curious about was how this would feel in the hand, because on the website, it does show that this pen has, it's not like a standard smooth body, like something like this Pilot Custom, where it's all smooth here. You can see that this pen has these like facets or ridges, and I wasn't sure how that would feel in hand. I was curious, but it's actually quite a comfortable pen in hand, and it does post quite comfortably. So this is a lot more comfortable in my hand. This one does not post comfortably. This one feels almost like this is too heavy for the end, but I find that this one feels quite comfortable if you were to post your pen. And you can see there's quite a difference in height there. So overall, they're both wonderful pens. I tend to write with my other Euphoria without it being posted, so it does end up feeling pretty balanced in my hand. And this one, I do both. Sometimes I find that you can write without it being posted, but you also can post it, and it's quite comfortable. So thank you so much, BENU, for sending me these two pens to try out. I've had a lot of fun in the last month or so that I've had these, just to really test them out, and I'm excited to show you today how they write and how they compare to other pens that I have in my collection. A few more pieces of information in case you're curious. So the material of both of these pens are high quality resin. The clip material is stainless steel. The length capped is 14.9 centimeters for the Euphoria and 13.8 centimeters for the Talisman. So this is just over a centimeter shorter than the Euphoria when it's capped. Weight-wise, the Euphoria is 26 grams. The Talisman is 21 grams. They're both screw-on, and technically the cap can be posted on both. And they both come with a number 6 Schmidt nib in fine, medium, and broad. And there's also those two nibs that I talked about in my other video, the 1.1 stub and the flex fine as well, which I don't believe are Schmidt. Somebody corrected me in my last video. So these ones are Schmidt, and just correcting my other video, I think I mentioned those were Schmidt nibs, and I think I was wrong. As well, these take the standard large international size converter and ink cartridge. So how do they write? I'm going to start by showing you the Talisman, because I have this in a fine nib and a medium. Currently it's inked with the fine because I started writing with, currently it's inked with the medium, but I I was using this pen originally with the fine nibs, so I'm going to leave a bit of a space for the fine. I'm going to write with the medium, I'll write with the broad, and then we'll come back later and fill in the fine. So, okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just show you how this writes. And again, these are both inked with Pilot Iroshizuku Kon Peki. The reason why I chose that ink is because it is widely available. It tends to be quite well known, so the chances of being able to compare this to whatever you have at home hopefully will be a little bit easier to do. Kon Peki also shows a lot of wonderful shading depending on the pen and depending on the nib size. And I love that you get to see that variation all with the same ink, and it's so interesting to see how much it varies. And also this ink is very easy to clean out. So it is not a waterproof ink. And it's a really well-behaved and easy to work with ink. So that's why I chose that ink. Okay, so this is the medium, as I said. I'm going to leave a bunch of space so I can come back in and show how the fine works. So you can see right away like how well this ink flows through this medium, and that is something that I have learned as I've been testing out these BENU pens, is they are so juicy. I've definitely heard that before, but witnessing it myself with the pen just helps me understand like what it means to have like a wet writer or like a juicy writer, and BENU definitely falls in that category. So this is the BENU Talisman, and this is the medium. Okay, and we'll do a little reverse. So you can see even when I reverse the nib, it's quite, you can still see quite a lot. And then I'll just do, so that's, you see it's quite wet. And then I'll just do a really short writing sample here. So I'll just do the very standard, the quick brown fox, jumps over, whoops. So hard to do, for me, it's so hard to do like live writing while on camera, but anyway. The lazy dog, and then we'll just do that in cursive. So you can see it's actually a little bit hard to do this on this tiny grid, but this is usually the grid that I work with. So just because I'm going to be switching the nib shortly, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my other Sanzen paper, and I'm going to draw a line. And what we're going to eventually do is we're going to show like a line comparison with all the different pens that I currently have inked. So I'm just going to leave a space at the top for the fine. And I have this on a separate sheet of paper because eventually I would really like to be able to show other pens as I ink them. And the one problem that I ran into with doing this in my cousin last time was I eventually ran out of space. So I'd like to have something a little more scalable as my collection or the pens that I try eventually grows. So we will call this BENU Talisman medium. Okay, so I'm now going to go ahead and switch the nib, and hopefully by the time we finish some of the other things that I want to go over in this video, we can come back and we can fill in the fine. So I'm just going to grab one of my coffee filters, and hopefully this won't be too messy. but it's always bound to be a little bit. So yeah, I'm just going to remove that converter, and then I'm going to put it in this fine nib. And it's as easy as that. So I'm just going to cap that, and I'm going to let this sit for a bit. Maybe I'll just let it sit this like nib down to see if that helps get the ink flowing. And I'll set this aside and I will clean that out after this video. Okay, let's go on to the BENU broad. So this is the number 6 Schmidt broad. Number 6, yeah, the number 6 Schmidt nib in a broad. So you can see already like how much more ink is coming out with this broad. And something I have noticed is this does tend to feather a little bit. So the broad is very broad and wet. So I'm just going to put Euphoria broad. So you can basically use this to like color things in. There's almost no, you can't really see anything between the lines, which I think is really cool. So there's not really any flex. And reverse. So yeah, so it's pretty wet as well. And we'll just do a really short writing sample. And this is going to be harder to do because obviously this is quite broad and these are very small squares, but let's see how small we can write with this. Okay, so you can see it's a lot harder to write with the broad, and I don't think there's as much feathering, but I think there is a little. I don't know if you can see that. There's a few other test pages where there was a lot of feathering, so I think that just comes down to this paper overall just being a little bit unpredictable. And you can see in terms of bleed through, actually there's quite a lot of bleed through with that broad. I doubt this is going to be ready, but we'll just give it a quick test. Yeah, it's going to take a little while, so we're going to leave that. Okay, so maybe let's go ahead and we'll do the line width comparison. I think that is going to be really fun. So I'm just going to set this aside. And I'm going to show the broad here so we can see that line. Oh, oops. Okay, and then I'll put BENU, Euphoria. Okay. So aside from that little error with the ruler, here you can see a little more closely the differences between the medium and the broad. Now, even though it's clear to see that the broad is definitely bigger than the medium, or broader, I think it'll be really interesting to compare now to other brands altogether. So I've pulled out, and this is the researcher in me, I've pulled out a bunch of my pens in my collection, and I have inked all of these up with Kon Peki. And as a reminder, the reason why I ink these pens up as opposed to dipping them is because I did a test last year where I dipped all of my pens, and you can see how much lighter everything looks compared to when you ink them up. So my conclusion was, if you really want to get a true reading of how the pen writes, unfortunately, you do have to ink it up, which does mean a lot of cleaning and a lot of writing with the same color ink. But for the sake of keeping this experiment as clean as possible and controlling as many elements as possible, that is something that I decided I was willing to do. So we have a variety of pens here, and I think the last time I did something like this, I tried to order it by fine all the way up to medium is really the broadest that I had. But I think this time I'm gonna just go by, I've kind of got these grouped by pen brand or pen types. And just because we ended on the BENU Euphoria broad, I actually think I'm gonna show you the Kaweco broad, because I noticed a difference. I don't know if it'll show up today, but I thought it was very interesting. So this is my Kaweco Brass Sport, and I've currently got a broad nib in here, and this is the stainless steel nib. So yeah, I think it's so interesting how much thinner that broad is. I mean, it is a different nib altogether, but it's the same ink. And I just think it's so interesting how different it shows up. So that is the difference between those two broads. This is the only broad I have. So just continuing on with Kaweco, I'm now going to show you what the fine nib and the medium nib looks like. And I will also preface this by saying that Kaweco tends to have quite a lot of variety in the nibs. So I don't really know whether this is a good nib or not. I've heard that it can vary. This is just the nib that came with this pen, and what's in here is the nib that came in this pen. So this is a fine steel nib. So immediately what shows up for me, what comes up for me is how much lighter this looks. So not only is the line thinner, but the actual writing shows a lot more of that light color in Kon Peki. And as you see more of these in writing samples, this is how I came to conclude that this is a very dry writer. So if I ever have a really wet ink that I need to tame, I think this is the pen that I will actually be using. So this is really interesting. This is also really dirty. I don't know why this pen leaked like this, but this is also a fine, but I found that this one tends to write differently than the fine in this pen. And I don't know if this is because it is a gold color nib. It's not a gold nib. But I find that this tends to write just a tiny bit broader than the other fine. I'm just going to call this like gold trim. I'm not sure if that's the right way to put it, but I know this isn't a gold nib. I think it's just, oh, gold plated, I think is the word. Maybe I'll just say gold plated. Yeah. So it's not actually as pronounced as I remembered it being, but I think you can see maybe it is a little bit broader. So that's my Kawecos. And this is actually why I don't use these pens as much, because I just find that they tend to make the inks that I'm using a little more dull. And I don't know if that's because I have like a bad nib, or if that's just how these pens write, but that's been my experience with Kaweco, which is why I haven't expanded my Kaweco Sports, even though I think the pen itself is so cute. Okay, so maybe next I will show you a couple more of my early pens. So this is my Lamy Safari. And this is an extra fine nib. So what I love about this Lamy Safari, surprisingly, is how saturated Kon Peki looks. So you can see here, just comparing it to the Kaweco Sport, it comes out so much darker, and I really like that. The next one I'm going to show you is the TWSBI Espresso with bronze trim. And this is also an extra fine nib. Now I do have another TWSBI with a fine nib, and I actually prefer the fine nib for a writing experience, but I was curious about the extra fine, so I picked that up, and at least for testing purposes, it's been helpful to have that comparison. This is, yeah, the TWSBI Eco. I'm going to put bronze trim just in case that impacts the nib, and this is an extra fine. So yeah, again, I'm surprised at how much more saturated that Lamy Safari comes out. I'm not sure the technical reasons why, but I do like how the color looks. But with the TWSBI Eco, what I like is you can see a little bit of that shading. So there's a few different shades that are coming out with that writing, which I think is really nice. Okay, next we'll do, I'm going to do my Pilot Prera. So this was a gift from my friend Wendy Sue, and this is a Pilot Prera in a fine nib. Yes, this is another really wonderful writing experience. I love Pilot nibs. They've got to be some of my favorite nibs. And I love the steel. Oh, I'll just put here. I'm just going to put steel. And it comes out nice and dark, similar to the Lamy Safari. It's just a really nice writing experience. Okay, next I'm going to do my Pilot Custom, my all-time favorite pen. I currently had this inked up with Kon Peki because I knew I wanted to do this comparison. But just the writing, the combination of the Pilot Iroshizuku ink with this beautiful fine nib is just such an amazing writing experience. I don't know if you can hear this with the microphone, but it's even like such a, you can even tell like it's a smoother writer just from the feedback sound. And this is a 14K nib. And again, even though this is a pretty fine, it's a pretty fine line, you can still see some shading that comes out. So despite it being so fine, you can still see a lot of shading. I love that. Okay, now I'm just going to do my other two pilots. So I've got my Pilot Vanishing Point, and this is a fine nib. And I think this is an 18K. I think I wrote it down in here. Yeah. So this is an 18K. Yep. This is a really wonderful writing experience, but for some reason my inks don't come out as saturated in the Vanishing Point. So you can even see with the custom, the Pilot Custom, these are both fine nibs, but the custom comes out just a little bit darker. You'll see in the longer writing samples it's a little more noticeable. So this is my Pilot Vanishing Point in a medium. And this is also 18K. This is a really beautiful writing experience. You can see it's like so much darker, and you end up getting so much variation. It's really a pleasure to write with, and I love how much darker it is compared to some of the other pens that we've already gone through. And the last two I'm going to go over. This is my Sailor Pro Gear Slim, and this is in an extra fine nib. And I just love how fine this line writes. I do have a Pilot Decimo with an extra fine nib, but I actually think I think I prefer the extra fine nib writing experience from the Sailor Pro Gear Slim. And I think this is a 14K. And last, we've got a Sailor Pro Gear Slim and a fine nib. And this is also a 14K. Okay, so that's all that I had inked up with Kon Peki, which is quite a lot. So going from the really saturated medium, which to be expected, like the broader the nib, the more ink that's going to get laid down on the page. But even the Sailor Pro Gear Slim, like despite how thin these lines are, you can see some variation. And then just comparing all of that to those Kaweco Sports and how kind of like muted or washed out that ink is coming, I just think the variation is really interesting. So I like that these are all using the same ink so that I can start to see differences in what might be worth tweaking, like perhaps the Kawecos could be tweaked in some way to show more ink when writing. I'm not really sure. And then going back to this BENU, looking at how dark that medium and that broad is, I think these are the darkest writers. So if you have a really fun ink or a really light colored ink that you want to see the properties of, I think the BENU pens will really show you that. I'm going to now check to see if this pen is ready. Okay, it's ready. So I'm just going to go back here. Okay, so the fine nib is actually probably my favorite, one of my favorite, if anything. You can see that it's still finer. It looks similar to a Lamy Safari extra fine. I mean, maybe it's a bit broader, but it still shows a lot of that beautiful shading of the Kon Peki ink. Now let's do a shorter writing sample here so we can kind of finish that comparison. Yes, this is definitely finer. And in reverse, it's not a pleasant writing experience, but you can do it. Okay, so there's the comparison between the fine, the medium, and the broad. And you can see as this is dried, there's a little bit of feathering on this one, but it's not as bad as I have seen it. So that leads me to conclude that what I saw before was probably more so to do with the paper being problematic than the pen being too much for this kind of paper. And then here, there's not a whole lot of bleed through with this one, but it's mostly with the broad that you see it in. So the next thing I wanted to show you, of course, was long writing samples, because I think it can be really helpful to get a feel for how a pen writes, more so than just, you know, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. That's great to give you a little bit of a sense, but I find when you write more with it, you can really see how it behaves. So I chose to use one of my inserts that I picked up in Japan. I chose this particular insert because it uses white Midori paper, which, even though I prefer the cream paper, I do think that the white paper is easier for comparison's sake. And this is a dot grid, which I don't use dot grid that much. I prefer grid or even blank, but I'm not a huge fan of dot. So I thought I could use this as my Kon Peki long form writing comparison. So as I try out new pens and as I want to see how it writes, then I would ink it up with Kon Peki and then I would write something in here. So I wanted to show you, this is a writing sample of the fine on this side versus the medium. So hopefully you can see here the differences between the two. And just in terms of what I chose to write, these are just the product descriptions that you can get off the website. So this is mainly the Tiger's Eye article that I was telling you about. Here's another comparison. So I think it's really cool to see like how this writes, this broad like that. And the other reason why I chose MD paper is because it is the other paper that I use most often. So I think it's best to test the pen on the paper that you're more likely to use. And I really loved this comparison, this broad BENU versus the broad Kaweco Brass Sport. Like, just seeing the difference here, it's so much lighter and this is a lot thinner. The line is a lot thinner. This is the two sports. So again, it's a little more subtle than I remembered, but this is the macchiato silver trim and this is the gold plated. This is the Sailor Pro Gear, the extra fine versus the fine. It's actually not that noticeable when I write it on MD paper, which I think is really cool. This is the Lamy Safari versus the Pilot Prera. This is the extra fine and this is the fine. And you can see that the Pilot Prera fine is just a tiny bit thinner than the Lamy Safari. But what I love about the Lamy Safari is the shading that comes out, which I think is quite beautiful. And this is the Vanishing Point, the fine on this side. You can see how much lighter this is. I don't know if that's how all Vanishing Points are or if it's just my Vanishing Point fine nib. So that's something that I want to look into. But this medium, just beautiful. And it's different. This is even still you can see like this is so much darker compared to this one. But this is the difference. And then I've got the Pilot Custom Amber and the fine. again, beautiful. You can see there's quite a lot of shading that comes out with this pen. And I've saved this for my Pilot Custom that I do have in a medium that I want to do that comparison. And then here is the TWSBI Eco Extra Fine, and eventually I plan to put the fine on this side so you can do that comparison. And that's all I have in this notebook. So I will just put it down here, and we can take one more look in case you're curious. And I'll try to, feel free to pause and take a closer look at these if you want. Okay, well, that is everything that I wanted to cover today. So if you have made it this far into the video, thank you so much for sticking around. I have a little treat for you. So yes, if you are still here, then you will catch this, but I am actually going to be giving away this pen to one of you. So very similar to my last BENU video, I really wanted to share the love. I truly appreciate the fact that BENU wanted to work with me again so quickly. And I think it's only fitting to share the love with you, because if it weren't for your views and for your engagement and your encouragement, then I wouldn't have opportunities like this to test out different pens and, try them out. So I'd really love to gift this to one of you, just as a thank you for being here and engaging with me and my channel. So to enter, I'll ask you to leave a comment and let me know what you think of this format, and if there's anything else that you would like me to compare in future videos. I'd love to do more of this kind of in-depth comparison. The researcher in me gets a lot of satisfaction doing this type of thing. So I quite enjoyed this, and it really allowed me to revisit pens that I haven't used in a while and just really enjoy them. So yeah, I'd love to do it again. So let me know in the comments any other things that you would like to see related to this kind of fountain pen experiment situation. And then go on to the Google form and enter in your information. Just like last time, I will announce the winner in my community tab. I will randomly select a winner, and then I will send this pen your way. So that is all for me today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it informative and it helped answer some questions that you may have had about the differences between the fine, medium, and broad. I know it's really challenging to pick a nib size, especially if you're trying to do it without being able to test it in person. So my hope is that this could be a helpful resource for you. All right. Thanks again for being here. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye.